Good afternoon, everyone. It is always wonderful to come together with you once again. So, right now, we are going to ask that you still your mind and come into this present moment now, releasing all thoughts of the past, all future predictions, all things distracting. Just let it all go and center into this moment now, the only time that really is. And breathe. It is a good day. And we are here. And so are you. And here we are to bring you awareness, reminders that this is the time of awakening. And what this means is going from the sleeping mind to the awakened mind, which is going from mindlessness to mindfulness, or rather, unaware to aware. We want to remind you of a few things in awakening. Remembering that awakening is a gentle process step by step, not a rushed, hurried endeavor, but a gentle, moment by moment conscious awareness of yourself as a mind, and also noticing when you have forgotten and thought yourself a body, you see. So remember this, you have two parts to your mind. You have the right mind, which is where the Holy Spirit abides. This mind is a total thought system of love, peace, forgiveness, light, joy, etc. And then you also have the wrong mind, and that is a thought system of total conflict, distress, darkness, fear, hatred, and so on. And you can always tell which one you're thinking with or which one you're following along with by how you feel and the results of your experience, you see. So if you're feeling agitated, if you're feeling irritated in any way, know that you're listening to the wrong voice, the wrong mind. And you can, in that moment, choose again. This is a process of choosing again. You see, it's a process of noticing when you have gone down the route of the ego mind and saying, hey, that's not really where I want to go. Forgive yourself and choose again. And then be patient with the process. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get an instantaneous change, especially if you have not been practicing this for long, you see. It is something that you build up moment by moment, step by step, and then it is built. Does this make sense to everyone? So you really want to have patience with yourself during this awakening and everything, you see. Part of awakening is patience, you see. That is love. That is being kind to yourself, rather than listening to the harsh dictates of the ego thought system, which says, hurry up, get this done, take it seriously. We also want to remind you that's how the world came to be, or how the world came into existence, was taking the tiny mad idea, the ego thought system, seriously, forgetting not to laugh, you see. So, or how we like to say it, remembering not to laugh. You can sense the subtle difference there. But really, lighten up. That is awakening. We really want you to feel that. It's not about getting serious and hunkering down and trying to figure out how to awaken from the dream when you don't necessarily believe that it is a dream. That's why there's a process a gentle step by step. It's an unwinding of the mind, not a tearing down. Does this make sense to everyone? So we are here to guide you in any way that we can through awakening. We love you. And here we are, and we are ready for the first submitted question so that we can have a conversation.
Yesterday, my sister had 2 grand mal seizures. I struggled with maintaining my joy for a bit, but I soon remembered my Course in Miracles lesson for the day, part of which states, God's will for you is perfect happiness. Your part is to be happy. I decided to choose again by asking the Holy Spirit how it sees the situation and to choose joy to the best of my ability at that moment. This morning, when I woke up, remembering the events of yesterday, I forgave myself for temporarily forgetting, and once again asked the Holy Spirit to show me its view of the situation. Shortly afterwards, I began to smell a strong sulfur scent, which caused an intense headache in my third eye area. Now, my sister was told that the periodic smell of burning rubber she has sensed for 30 years is caused by seizures she experiences because of a bad car wreck when she was in high school. Was my strong sulfur-smelling sensation and headache related to my feelings regarding my sister? My neurologist thinks my smelling sensation / headache may have been caused by me having a seizure as well. But is this form versus content confusion again? If so, can you explain the content? Is the content always just a blessing, and I am to be thankful for more practice maintaining my harmony by remembering to choose again? Is this part of my, quote, gift of being a sensitive, which I am to give back to the Holy Spirit to use?
Okay, so we are going to help you understand what's actually really going on in your mind here, recalling that the real cause of all of this is your own mind's decision to experience it. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And yes, indeed, it is confusion of form and content, you see. So it really, at the heart of it all, has nothing to do with seizures, though in form it is expressed that way. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And so that was your question. Is this related to actually form and content confusion? And we said yes. The other thing is we want you to lighten up on yourself and all once again, rather than taking it seriously. Does this make sense?
Yes.
We want you to pay attention to something interesting with your question. What it is actually a statement. Do you follow? You ask the Holy Spirit to show you how it sees the situation. But prior to that, you had already made a decision of what it actually means to you. Does this make sense?
Waiting. By wondering if it was related?
By taking it seriously altogether. Okay. Holy Spirit doesn't look on it as though it is anything more than a simple mistake. So its guidance is to move you out of the situation and beyond it. Does this make sense?
Yes.
That is in thought. But the ego mind thought system wants you to focus in on what it has decided is the problem. You see. And what we want you to realize is the problem is always and only the idea that you could be separate from love. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And it does express itself through seemingly different avenues, such as health problems and so on. But what is being asked really in these situations is a call for love. Does this make sense?
Oh, yes, right.
So remember, you have but two contents in your mind. That would be love and fear. And you can always tell which one you have chosen by how you feel. So if you are feeling more confusion, then you are listening to the voice for fear. You have chosen the content of fear. But if you feel peace and calmness, or actually a clarity, then you have chosen love, you see. Love doesn't linger on what is perceived as a problem at all, because love sees only itself, you see. Does this make sense?
So, did I not really hand it over?
Exactly. Exactly. You did not hand it over at all. Here's the trickery of the ego. It says, yes, let's hand it to the Holy Spirit to tell us how the problem is the seizure, and then tell us that this is what we need to analyze. Remember that Holy Spirit accepts, the ego analyzes. Does this make sense?
Yes.
We want to remind you to lighten up about all of this. Lighten up. And as far as seeing a doctor about any of this, don't take that seriously either. Does this make sense? Because the ego will tell you that that is a problem. Does this make sense?
Waiting.
You always want to go toward that which brings you a peace of mind. Okay?
So, if I sense something, disregard it because it is always of the ego?
If you sense something, yes, but look at it with the Holy Spirit, which means to notice actually all sensing does come from the ego thought system. Holy Spirit just is. Does this make sense? But you can have a sensitivity to the awareness of certain energies that seem to be going on in your mind. And when it is uncomfortable, know that that is of the ego. So you can then choose again. Does this make sense? Without judging yourself.
Yes.
Wonderful. Does this answer your question?
Waiting. So, always, only, ever in my mind.
Yes, there is nothing that is actually outside of your mind, but we will tell you the ego wants you to think that it is all outside of your mind. That it doesn't have anything to do with your mind, but has to do with something else. Does this make sense? Which wants to put you in the idea of victimhood, that things can be done to you. Does this make sense?
And never related to others?
Absolutely. It is not related to others. It is related to you. Does this make sense?
Waiting.
And remember this, all minds are actually the same. Okay, and what we mean by that is all think that you are separate, you see, in that you are the same. Does this make sense?
Well, then what is the purpose of the gift of being a sensitive?
It's to notice when something's a little off and choose again. But don't take it seriously. Step back, turn to the love within you, which is your right mind, and let love lead the way in all that you seem to do. Does this make sense?
Yes, so being sensitive is to know how to spread love.
It's not to do with how to spread love. What you want to do is choose again, which is to take the step back that we just mentioned. Align with the love in your mind and let the love in your mind guide you forward. Not as a separate entity outside yourself, but that is one with you, you see. And in fact, in truth, is you.
Oh, yes.
So, does this answer your question about this? Do you follow what we mean by you can sense things that are off? And what you do is you take it back to your own mind and you look at your mind with the love in your mind, you see. And then you move forward from there. And when we say move forward, we're speaking of thought-wise and in the mind. Does this make sense?
Perfect.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So, wonderful.
Okay. Next question. When I have a hard time focusing to meditate, am I to not take it so seriously and try again later? Or you are much too tolerant of mind wandering?
Wonderful. Both. You're taking it far too seriously. And in fact, taking it too seriously is a form of mind wandering. Does this make sense to you?
Waiting.
And then you also want to tune into the energy of who is it that wants to be doing the meditating? You see, is it a spontaneous love and a spontaneous desire to just be, which wouldn't involve any kind of effort at all? Or is it I've got to meditate to achieve such and such, or I need to meditate in order to be such and such? Does this make sense?
It's my lesson time, LOL, to achieve.
Well, remember this, who you really are doesn't need to achieve, it just is. So you're saying that these periods are to do with the lessons. Is this what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, well, be gentle on yourself. And indeed, if it gets too strenuous, get up, do something else. Come back to it when you have a clearer mind to do so. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. And again, don't take it seriously. We know that some of the language in the Course, A Course in Miracles, sounds so very serious, but we also want you to pick up on the lightness of the message in this. Does this make sense? It is meant to help you move out of the thought system of seriousness and into lightness of being.
Yes.
Wonderful. Anything else?
No.
So there is a desire to take it seriously, but not make it a serious endeavor. Do you follow what we mean? Can you sense the difference between the two? Or how we have also said it before without using the word seriousness, but with emphasis. That this is something you actually do want to do. You see what we mean? So you put a little more emphasis on, yes, I do want to do this. You see?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being like this, the ego, take it seriously and make it really serious. And if you don't do it, you're going to feel really bad and guilty and all of that, which is the ego's purpose for that anyway. So you really want to lighten up and just say, I really actually do want to do this. So I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm going to forgive myself when I forget to do the best I can. You see?
Okay, then. Thank you. This is true. I don't feel good when I don't do well.
And then you realize that that's just judgment, you see. Lighten up. And say, I see you, ego thought system. Now I'm going to brush you aside.
Thank you.
Thank you. So.
Well, I like the part where it said that looking at the error gives it power.
The ego.
The ego.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. In fact, its whole purpose for you is to focus on the error. That's why you never get past it. We have talked to the channel about this before, these kinds of thoughts. We called them sticky thoughts. Can you feel that? Oh, this thought feels very sticky. Feels like I might get caught into some kind of web that I feel is difficult to get out of. So if you feel that way, this is a sticky thought. Breathe and let it go. Does this make sense?
Nice.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Then you don't form or perpetuate an attachment, you see. All the sticky words, attachment and all of that stuff. So, webs and stickiness. Give it a smile and a nod. A
Right.
gentle little tickle.
So just move on.
Up. Yes, indeed.
To the next day's lesson.
Yes, indeed.
Great.
Or whatever feels most uplifting in the moment.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's an online question. Please explain what is meant by the phrase, God is an idea from ACIM. There seems to be more to God than just an idea.
Well, God is an idea just as you are an idea, you see. God, the real God, okay, God doesn't even have a name in truth. God just is, you see. But the God that you have learned since being in duality, since you have been in the dream, is an idea. Does this make sense?
I'm waiting for an answer.
Everything here is an idea. Everything. God knows not of your idea of it at all. It just simply is. Does this make sense?
Yeah, waiting for an answer.
Well, we'll just continue to talk that the God that we speak of there in the Course is actually an idea, because God, in its true self, doesn't have a name. It is beyond concept. Does this make sense? It has no definition. It just is.
Yes.
Wonderful. And does this answer your question?
Waiting. Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this does not apply to me, but it bothers me when a man or woman cheats, but still hold on to their marriage. What is the reason behind this? Why am I bothered since I'm not going through this, but I get triggered when I hear stories about it? What is the, quote, ego versus Holy Spirit's, unquote, point of view on this subject? Thank you, and I love you.
And we love you too. So first of all, we're going to say that being triggered and looking at it in that way is the ego's view of it. Does this make sense? And the other thing is, we liked this, that you had said, this doesn't have to do with me. This isn't about me, it's about others. We want you to know it is about you because you wouldn't be feeling triggered if it had nothing to do with you. Does this make sense? And what we mean by to do with you, we are talking about your ego. Does this make sense?
I don't want it to happen to me, but I am calling for it.
The Holy Spirit sees nothing. It doesn't see a problem. It doesn't see anything there at all. You see, the ego is pointing out the error of the seeming others. You see. So in your mind, there's a thought that you could be cheated on. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Which is a condition of separation, of being separate, of being an individual, not part of oneness. When that idea is false, there is no such thing as separation in truth, and you are oneness itself in truth. Does this make sense? But the ego wants to distract you from oneness, and so it's pointing out the cheating couples, you see.
Yes.
Look at these separate people doing these separate shady things, and then feel triggered about it, you see. We want you to be conscious and aware that a decision was already made in your mind that these subjects are the subjects that will upset you. It has nothing to do with the actual subject, but the decision to become upset by them, which is actually the choice to listen to the wrong mind, the ego mind. Does this make sense? And what Holy Spirit says is change your mind. Choose again. You don't have to go down that route. You can break free of that. There's nothing there. Does this make sense?
Waiting. Well, if I get rid of that belief, then I can be free?
Well, yes, because you are free. But it's not about getting rid of the belief, because that's the ego telling you that there's something there. And that reinforces the belief that the ego is real, you see. Whereas you can shrug it off and say, this is nonsense. It is not this that I would see, and then move on, you see. Or I know what thought system this comes from, and I'm just not going to go there anymore. This is of no use to me or to anyone. Does this make sense? All it really does is perpetuate the false idea of separation.
Yes.
And also, it wants you to take it seriously. We're going to keep bringing this back up with everyone today. It's about taking it seriously, you see, making it real to you, reinforcing the validity of its existence when it doesn't exist at all. Does this make sense?
Yes, yes. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Lighten up. Again, just don't take yourself seriously. Don't take any of this stuff seriously. Lighten up and let it go. So,
Thanks.
thank you. Anything else?
Well, here's another question.
Go ahead.
In doing the lessons, it appears that a goal is to help us establish habits of thought. Is the development of such habits of thought something that we should take seriously in the sense that we make it a central goal without, of course, not beating ourselves up when we forget or don't do them perfectly? I ask because it seems that some accounts I have read of quests for quote unquote enlightenment seem to involve an evolution into a single-minded quest. Or is this about building desire through experiencing peace?
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Do you want to make this a central focus? Yes, you do. Because a single-minded focus is how things are built. Does this make sense? And strongly so. That's what the lessons are for, is to build brick by brick, step by step, reinforcing truth all along the way. Does this make sense? And like we said before, if it feels too serious to say taking it seriously, just place emphasis on it. Does this make sense? Yes, I do want to wake up. I do want to do this. I'm going to do it and step gently forward with guidance from the Holy Spirit, which is with love, not judgment. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. And becoming very aware of what mind you are working with, once again, because we're going to tell you the ego is going to always be on board with anything that you can take seriously. And it can get you there. It will use, it does, in fact, it does use the Course sometimes, you see. It says, oh goody, something they're getting serious about, where I can give my input, my 2 cents, and sound like the Holy Spirit. But we want to remind you the Holy Spirit brings clarity, love, joy, and peace, light. Okay? If it feels heavy-handed, harsh, and like you're under the rule of a dictator, choose again. Does this make sense? Remember, enlightenment is lightening up. You see?
Yes.
Enlightenment is actually learning and really having the awareness and growing into the reality of truth here and now, that none of this means anything, you see, that all of this is but a dream. Then you stop taking it seriously. It's not a big deal. It really has no real effect on me, because who and what I really am isn't even here, you see, but is outside of the false idea of separation altogether, outside of the dream, you see. Then you're able to laugh in an easy way, not a forced way, trying to laugh through some kind of pain. No, it's lightening up and being light of heart. And so laughter just naturally arises, you see. And it's not a laughter that you think of when you're laughing at something. It's just a gentle joy that erupts within you. and from within you, not from anything outside. Does this make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So part of this process, if not the whole of this process, is to become lighter of heart, is to loosen up, taking awakening with emphasis, meaning placing emphasis on it as something you desire and something that you are willing to move forward in, but with a gentle step by step, you see. Always remembering to return to gentleness, what is kind, what is loving, what is filled with light. Does this make sense?
Yeah, but it's hard to be lighthearted when things are not going well.
Well, that makes sense. And that's why we say you want to lift up from the battleground. When you're in the battleground, meaning you are in it, so to speak, it's really hard to look at life and feel lighthearted. You see, that means you have fallen deep asleep. Does this make sense? And so rather than seeing the truth, you have surrounded yourself with all of the calamity, all of the chaos, all of the conflict. How can I get out of the conflict? I don't see how to do that, because I can't seem to get my focus off of conflict. And of course, if you're always focused on conflict, how can you feel lighthearted? Does this make sense? You have buried yourself in this seeming heap of pain. It's not easy to see the light when you've covered yourself in what's dark. Does this make sense? And in such a way that you didn't even give yourself the room to breathe. And really, that's what seems to be going on right now here in this plane of existence, in the dream. You see? We know we've been working with the channel all these years, and lately it says there doesn't even seem to be any breathing room. You see? Does this make sense? And the thing is, you've got to step away from the dream. You've got to let it go for a little bit rather than keep your face buried in it. Does this make sense? You keep your face buried in it, that's all you will see. And your mind will continue to give you more of what you can physically see until you let it go. Until you say, this is just far too much, there must be a better way. And that's when you can begin to move in a new direction. But you've got to get to that point where you say, this is just too painful. This is just too much. There must be a better way.
Yes, it makes sense. But I need to remember and practice when things are not going well.
Absolutely. And that's where the practice is actually most beneficial, is when things don't seem to be going well, that you can make that conscious decision to choose again, you see. That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, you see.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You see, you've got to use everything that you see on the screen of your awareness as a way to choose again, not get more in depth with the illusion. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But use it as a jumping off point. This really does not feel good. There must be a better way. This cannot actually be true there must be a better way. There must be another way of seeing this. How do I see this truly? Holy Spirit, how do you see this? And remember, it isn't about what you see with your physical eyes, but how you perceive what you seem to come across in the illusion. Does this make sense? All of this is a change of perception, a change of view. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And we're going to also help you out a little bit. That doesn't necessarily mean that when you change your mind that the form of everything is going to change. Okay? Things are relatively going to stay the same in the illusion, but your mind is changing. Does this make sense? So do not become disheartened if you change your mind or when you change your mind, but the riots are still going on. Does this make sense? Or people are still being murdered. Does this make sense?
Yes. Thanks.
You're welcome. And the other thing is we want to help you out a little bit more with this too. When you are seeing these things, we want to remind you everything that is experienced by anything ever is a decision, a choice made in the mind. Nobody did it without some kind of awareness of choosing. Does this make sense? Though the figure in the dream may be so deep asleep, it is not aware that it made a decision to have the experience, but it did, okay? And so how you can look at it is, okay, I'm aware that this is a decision in the mind, and that was something that for some reason, that was the best route to go for this one, you see. But you want to just know that and just breathe through it. Does this make sense? Don't feel as though you've got to do anything but change your own mind. That doesn't mean if you're in a situation that somebody, let's say somebody becomes injured and you say to yourself, okay, but that was a decision made in that person's mind and they're bleeding to death on the side of the road. I should just keep driving. That's not what we mean. It just means do whatever you can to help if you're in a situation like that, but don't do it with taking it seriously. Do it knowing this is part of someone's dream, you see. Does this make sense? So then you don't make it more real to you, but you're just kind of going through the motions, being normal, okay? Throughout awakening, you still wanted to be normal, okay? A normal person would help somebody who's dying on the side of the road. If you come across that, you'd call 911 or you get out of the car and try to stop the bleeding or anything like that. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to spiritualize it and make it something to say, okay, well, that person chose that, so I'm just going to keep on going. That's very strange. Does this make sense? See, sometimes that comes about with spiritualizing everything. You see. Oh, it's just a dream. That's not very helpful, and that's not very kind. You want to instead let love lead the way in all things. That means, how would love show up? Step back and let love through you. Does this make sense?
Yes, which would inspire you to action.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you feel so compelled.
Yes.
Great.
Anything else? Thank you.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Wonderful.
Next question. In the declaration, I am responsible for what I see, should we think of this as I am responsible to remember that I am dreaming, or does this specifically mean how I am seeing, as in judgment or forgiveness? Maybe both. Could you please bring clarity to this? Thank you infinitely.
Isn't it funny that we were just kind of talking about that?
Yes.
That when we say that, we are wanting you to change your perception of things. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. So yes, it does have to do with a change of mind, not what you physically see. Okay, like we were saying earlier, just because you've changed your mind doesn't mean that your physical eyes are going to stop seeing certain things. Does this make sense? But it is how you react to it or how you perceive it instead. Does this make sense?
Thank you. Roger that.
You're welcome. Perfect.
How can I more easily remember my eternal spirit self?
Beautiful. Well, one good thing to do is start your day right, which would be to tune in to yourself before anything else. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So rather than just jumping out of bed and going here and there and forgetting all about yourself, you want to tune into yourself first. And a good thing to do would be, how would I like to feel through this day? And then have that ready in your mind, how you would like to feel, what things you'd like to experience in the day. And then just gently let it go. And then remind yourself that this day I will indeed experience if I listen to my higher self, the Holy Spirit, God. Does this make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so throughout your day, take with you the awareness of what you set forward from the beginning of the day and tune into yourself and say, how am I doing?
So setting intentions.
Yes, indeed. And then throughout the day, check in, how am I doing? And in that question, how am I doing? Know that you're tuning in with yourself, okay? But if it becomes harsh, know that you've tuned into the wrong voice. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a feeling of disappointment, oh, I didn't do that, well, let that one go and turn back to your real self. You see, who is love and who is gentle and who is kind.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If someone loses a job, is it their own doing? Because we are never victims and everything is in our mind.
Yes, actually, that's very true. If someone loses their job, it's a decision in the mind, you see. And you are correct. It's not something happening to you from outside of your own mind. Does this make sense? So if you get fired, that's because actually the cause of that is your mind. So you take it back to your mind, you see. You look at your mind with the Holy Spirit. That was a decision that was made ahead of the firing. Does this make sense?
Waiting. Yes.
Wonderful. And does this answer your question?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
My granddaughter is 4 years old, and her father's mother told her that people get punished and go to hell if they are bad. This is her other grandmother's belief. What can my daughter tell her daughter? She doesn't want this kind of influence on her children. Is this happening because my daughter is focused on what she doesn't want? What can she do?
Let's see. We'd like to help you out by telling you the best steps to take would be to begin to teach your daughter, or tell your daughter to teach her daughter, your granddaughter who's 4 years old, the truth. That this is a dream, and that God is only love. God does not punish. God only loves. But there are people in the world who were brought up in the belief that God is something else, something other than love. And in that thought system, they were taught that there's such thing as hell, and that God is a punishing God. And tell your granddaughter that this is not true. What is true is that God is love, and that you are innocent always. And that her other grandmother is just confused. But don't push against her other grandmother. Teach her to show up as love, which means to be all allowing, all kind and gentle. Just take the steps of kindness, you see, and move in the direction of love. And eventually, she will grow more and more, stronger and stronger, and exemplify truth. Does this make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, this helps.
Wonderful. So you really want to be kind, because those who are asleep, and all of you really are, but some more than others, let's say one has grown up, as we were saying, taught that God is a punishing God. You don't want to push against them, because that's a belief that they have right now. But instead, you just want to move as love and teach only love by extending only love. So that's the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I also often have difficulty asking for help as well as accepting help if it's offered. I feel a bit awkward or guilty accepting gifts. I'm trying to understand why I am like this. How can I change?
All right. First of all, those feelings are all feelings that are of the ego thought system. So if you're feeling that way, know that that's the ego. Okay. Just be gracious and accept the gift, and just don't take it seriously. Does this make sense?
Waiting.
The ego wants you to think you don't deserve anything like that, especially help. That's help with a capital H. He doesn't want you to know about the Holy Spirit. Doesn't want you to know about love. You see, it doesn't know about love. And it actually doesn't even know about the Holy Spirit. You see. So what you want to do is, in your own mind, just move toward love and kindness. You want to accept a gift because that's the kindest thing to do. Does this make sense?
Yes.
In this situation.
Thank you.
And when we say that, we are speaking of gifts that are given from the kindness of someone's heart, not to get something else. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I see. So it's the ego.
Yes, indeed. So you want to let that thought system go by doing what it says not to do.
Oh, thank you so much. This really helps me.
You're welcome. Wonderful. So
it feels like deep trust in our common, holy, eternal living source is key to experiencing a free-flowing dream of personhood while it yet appears. What role does trust in source play in this awakening process?
trust in source is everything, you see, because awakening is awakening to your source, awakening to source. Does this make sense? Rather than remaining covered.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. So in the process of awakening, You're always in a movement that is up, okay? So it is moving up rather than remaining low. Does this make sense? Now, sometimes you may have experiences where you have to enter into certain situations in the dream that seem lower, but you perceive it differently. You show up differently because you bring with you the truth, which is love. You don't take the lower seriously. Does this make sense to everyone?
Yeah, so the created, trusting in its creator feels most natural.
Yes, indeed. In fact, that is the only natural thing, really. It's completely unnatural to not trust your creator, your source, who is love. So it is the most natural thing to be all that you truly are, which is one with love. That is your source. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
love
so
you
much.
so much.
We love you so much too. In fact, we love all of you so much. There are no words and no ways in which we can express this. But in this way, right here and now, you can feel this. Our love for you is ever expanding, eternal, all that is, and always with you. We thank you for joining with us today. Know that you can join with us at any time. In fact, we encourage that you do join with us within your own mind, wherever you seem to be, anytime. A good thing to do, begin to start to practice joining with us before moving about your day. That means joining with the love in your mind, your right mind, before proceeding into any kind of action in the day. We are always with you. We have enjoyed this joining immensely. We love you. You are blessed, and we are always with you. Namaste.